As we have been showing you, a close call for Donald Trump at an Ohio rally just a little while ago when somebody in the crowd apparently broke through the security perimeter and reportedly threw something that just missed the Republican presidential candidate, although you can't make it out on camera. This happening just hours after angry clashes broke out between protesters and supporters at a canceled rally in Chicago. Trump's GOP rivals blame what they call his divisive rhetoric. But Trump claims he is a unifier, and this morning blamed the violence on the protesters. Here for a fair and balanced debate, Craig Verroga is the president of Patriot Majority. Lauren Claffey is the former spokesperson for Senator Saxby-Chambliss. Thank you both for joining us. Lauren, let's start with you. Who do you blame for this violence?
I think all parties are to blame for this. I don't think that you can levy blame particularly on Donald Trump or the protesters. I mean, the heightened rhetoric of this political discourse these days is just appalling to see, quite honestly. And I think this was accumulation of things that have been happening for years.
Right?
I mean, I think that this is terrible, what's happening. I do think that Donald Trump bears a large moral responsibility for this. He started his campaign by attacking Americans. He's joked about murder. He has said that he could commit murder and people would continue to support him. And I think that if you talk like that, you're going to, one, get protesters, and two, the type of rhetoric that he's using is condoning violence. And I think that we're probably going to see more of this, and I think it's atrocious because people's lives are at stake.
You know, some people ask, where was all this righteous indignation over incitement of violence during the Obama administration, the past 7 years of it? To quote a couple of his phrases through the years, I know they, the special interests and lobbyists, are gearing up for a fight as we speak. My message to them is, so am I. Another one, I don't want to quell anger. I think people are right to be angry. I'm angry. Another one, if they bring a knife to a fight, we bring a gun. Because from what I understand, folks in Philly like a good brawl. I've seen the Eagles fans. Those, President Obama, where was this kind of indignation when those were marks being made?
I think that, I mean, it's one thing to talk about anger. It's another thing to talk about murder. It's another thing to tell your supporters at a rally to remove physically protesters. It's another thing to condone when your manager physically accosts a reporter. I think it's I mean, and you may be, right about, some of the rhetoric and whether it's appropriate or not, but I do think that there is a quantitative difference in what Donald Trump is doing, and no American politician in either party has talked like this in 80 years.
There have been suggestions that MoveOn.org is behind a lot of this orchestrated violence. There certainly appears to be, as we've watched these rallies progress through the last several months, a pattern to them, that a protester erupts every 3 minutes, every 4 minutes, every 5 minutes or so, making it virtually impossible for Trump to complete his thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely organized. I think that you have a millennial activist movement that's happening, and we've seen it all throughout. They're looking for opportunities to get the attention that they need, and Donald Trump's rallies are covered wall-to-wall by the media, nonstop. They're a perfect opportunity for attention seekers to go out there and make a name for themselves, get their voices heard, their issues out there. So it makes sense that this would be a target of organized protests like this.
Let me ask you one more question, Craig, about this before we move on to another subject. But Clive Crook, who's a writer for Bloomberg View, a British guy, wrote earlier last month about his experience being a Brit and working in Washington, D.C., but buying property in West Virginia, which gave him a new perspective on the kind of people who go to Trump rallies. He said, quote, they understand the prevailing view that they're bigots, too stupid to know what's good for them, and they see that this contempt is reserved especially for them. The ones I know don't seem to be all that angry or bitter. They find it funny more than infuriating, but they sure don't like being looked down upon. Does that explain the violence we're seeing in some respect?
No, I think the violence we're seeing is because of Donald Trump. I mean, there have been Americans of good faith and conscience in both parties for decades who have disagreed with each other. But we have not seen this level of violence and this type of rhetoric out of a candidate's mouth in any of our lifetimes. I mean, we haven't seen anything like this since the 1930s, whether it was Huey Long or Adolf Hitler.
All right. You just broke Godwin's law. You're not supposed to. I won't get into that. First person to invoke Hitler's name in a discussion loses the argument. Anyway,
I'll have to Google that after.
Okay.
But look, I mean, both Democrats and Republicans are beginning to say that, and we're having a discussion in this country about whether he's Benito Mussolini or Adolf Hitler. That's horrible.
All right, Craig Verroga, thank you very much. Lauren Claffey, appreciate your coming in today.
Thank you.